back in the day, if you want to be a carpenter, right, or a great painter, and that could be your business, you just did one thing and focused on one very narrow skill. It didn't really change all that much. But a lot of times now we're talking about tech companies and startups and social media marketing and all the different ways that people are getting themselves out there. And the algorithms change overnight and all this stuff changes. So if you get to be a laser focused expert, I'm not saying don't be, focus on being great at what you're doing. That's not what I'm saying. But it could almost serve you better if you're just willing to be flexible and learn and adapt and grow instead of saying, nope, this is how I do it. And I'm going to continue to do it the same way and hope to exist in 20 years. Am I hearing you right?
Well, there's multiple parts to that. One is you have to be great at what you do. Number two is you have to be aware of trends. It's kind of like, again, someone I interviewed a while ago who talked about one of the classic stories that people use on interviews. He called it the big win story. You're seeing trends and you're following those trends. Sometimes you're a little bit ahead of the wind on the trend, and you're a vanguard individual. And that's on the work side. But on the other side of this, I always think in terms of my own experiences. You can be great at what you do, but if no one knows that you are great at what you do, you're invisible.
Our guest today is known as the Big Game Hunter. He has over 40 years of experience helping companies hire talent and also helping people find work. Today, he's a career coach, a leadership coach, and an executive coach. Welcome to the show, host of the No BS Job Search Advice Radio, the #1 podcast in the job search industry, Jeff Altman.
Yay!
Here we go, man. I'm going to pick on you real early here. I usually don't pick on my guests,
Thank
especially
goodness.
at the top of the show. But he said, hey, press record. We're looking good. We're sounding good. He said, we're going to have a good interview. I said, Jeff, we're going to have a great interview. And I'm ready for it. Are you ready for it?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Guys, if you're listening, you're not watching, you're missing out because Jeff's he's amped up. He's got the hat on that says coach. If you didn't know, that's what he is. Now you do, because I read the bio there. Kept it short and sweet because we're going to unpack a lot of it here and kind of learn a little bit more about Jeff's story, because he's here not to just pitch his coaching advice. I mean, that's obviously a big part of what he does. I will let you know all of those links are clickable in the show notes of social media. You can go to the nobscoachingadvice.com website. Also, jobsearchcoachinghq.com is where you can check more out about Jeff.
And I'm going to add one more to you. TheBigGameHunter.us.
.us. TheBigGameHunter.us. Awesome. Yeah. All right, so let's do this. Let's kick this bad boy off. So we're going to talk about executive leaders. That's who you help out. You develop them, right? So what do you find are really the biggest challenges that employees face in developing into executive leaders?
No one knows what leadership really means. They know what being a boss and being bossy means. But leadership is not about being bossy. It's about being willing to hold the center of a situation and engender the trust of your team as well as the trust of the people that you're serving. And thus, people enter into it and they're learning, as they always have, by the seat of their pants with very little support. They've gotten to this place because they were the best of the employees at the level below. And no one coached them or mentored them into the new role. And certainly no one's mentoring or coaching them once they're in the new role.
Wow. That's one of my favorite answers on the show because it's extremely true. And it's not like one of these rah, big statements. It's the actual, like, I've been in corporate America. I've been from the first guy on the bottom of the totem pole to the, to a mid-range manager and to owning my own company. And I can tell you, I was just wondering to pick your brain on it, like how some people try to identify that they want that, but you have to take those steps to get there to be qualified for it, number one, and respected, number two. But also, like, do you feel that Like, would you recommend or give advice to someone who wants to grow into that, to identify it first, or just kind of like be the best you can in the role and focus at what's in front of you? What's that? There's got to be kind of a balance there, right? Focus on what's in front of you and the big picture.
So I always start off with excellence. You become excellent at what you're asked to do. If that's a junior staffer, you are the best junior staffer. You don't lose sight of the fact that you've been hired to be extraordinary at what you do. Not ordinary, not being one of the people. You're hired to be exceptional. And then from there, as you grow, as people get to know, like, trust, and respect you, obviously you have to have relationships with others. And in those relationships, you're there to develop contacts for yourself and to provide service to others. So often people are so focused on, I've got this anvil in front of me, and I've got this blacksmith hammer there, and I'm going to hammer that horseshoe over and over again forever without ever looking up. And the problem is you always have to be looking up because things change. I was doing an interview with someone earlier today, and the metaphor came up of how people are just so narrow focused on where they are today. And the world is changing. Linear behavior, linear career development doesn't exist anymore. And thus the idea of nonlinear growth. Well, if you're not going to do it, the universe is going to make you do it. The economy is going to make you do it, because where we are today is not where we're going to be 3 years from now. Or 5 years from now. Putting aside COVID and pandemics and stuff like that, where we're going to be 5 years from now is going to be very different than where we were 5 years ago, or where we are today.
So do you think like the current environment then would favor someone who, I know this is overstated and overused, but like the jack of all trades, master of none is actually an advantageous thing in a ever-changing climate that, like you said, back in the day, if you want to be a carpenter, right, or a great painter, and that could be your business, you just did one thing and focused on one very narrow skill, it didn't really change all that much. But a lot of times now we're talking about tech companies and startups and, social media marketing and all the different ways that people are getting themselves out there, and the algorithms change overnight and all this stuff changes. So if you get to be a laser focused expert, I'm not saying don't be, focus on being great at what you're doing. That's not what I'm saying, but it could almost serve you better if you're just willing to be flexible and learn and adapt and grow, instead of saying, nope, this is how I do it, and I'm going to continue to do it the same way and hope to exist in 20 years. Am I hearing you right?
Well, there's multiple parts to that. One is you have to be great at what you do. Number two is you have to be aware of trends. It's kind of like, again, someone I interviewed a while ago who talked about one of the classic stories that people use on interviews. He called it the big win story. You're seeing trends and you're following those trends. Sometimes you're a little bit ahead of the wind on the trend, and you're a vanguard individual. And that's on the work side. But on the other side of this, I always think in terms of my own experiences. You can be great at what you do, but if no one knows that you are great at what you do, you're invisible. Right. And we live in a time where visibility is so important to us. I'm not suggesting you become a Kardashian by any stretch of the imagination.
You don't think I can make it as a Kardashian? I mean, what was...
Well, you have to stand up and turn around. I got to check you out. But when all is said and done, it's about marketing yourself so the world knows your capabilities. Right. When I did coach training, they taught me how to be a great coach. And that was very helpful. It gave me some good underpinnings for what I intended to do. But they didn't teach the business of coaching. They didn't teach you how to promote yourself as a coach or market yourself as a coach. University grads, they don't know how to find a job. They know how to be good employees.
Sure.
And that's it. Maybe they know how to be
and write a tight resume. But yeah, and what you're saying, kind of joking about the Kardashian thing, but it made me think that the truth in that is everybody needs to be themselves, right? Jeff Altman is Jeff Altman. Mike DeChocho is Mike DeChocho. Kim Kardashian's Kim Kardashian. We each have our own individual brand. And obviously, until people really know what we're all about, business is always going to tie back down to, do they know, like, and trust you before they're going to work with you on any level? And products and great brands build a know, like, and trustability, right? And it's no different if someone's a solopreneur right now listening. You are your brand. So people are going to know, like, and trust you. If you're selling products or offer services, do they know, like, and trust what you're all about? The messaging needs to be tight. And Jeff's saying, yeah, you got to get out there. But then it's what you do once the spotlight's put on you, Jeff. Now what do you do, right?
Deliver. That's your goal, is great delivery. That's whether you're an employee or as a business owner. Yeah. And that's why I always start off with, you have to be exceptional at what you do. You have to be world class at what you do. So that people know, like, trust, and I add the extra dimension on respect you for what you do. They believe in you. And thus you become top of mind for them, for expertise. So if I said the color blue, for example, obviously there are a million shades of blue, but there's one that would come to mind for you,
right,
as being the dominant one. I don't know what that is, but there's a particular shade of blue that would be top of mind.
Right.
And for everyone, we have that particular shade of blue in what we look for in an employee, in a product or service. We want to be that exceptional individual that we think of instantly as being the solution to a problem.
Wow. Really, really well said. And so let's talk about that. What attributes would you say have led to we'll talk about you in particular, your impressive ability to execute, and you said deliver results at such a high level?
So I've had two careers. One was as a headhunter, which I did for more than 40 years. I filled a ton of positions when I did search. I think the final tally that we were able to quantify, and there were a lot that we didn't quantify, the data just got lost over the course of years, was I filled more than 1,200 full-time positions plus a ton of consulting assignments. And I evaluated more than 750,000 resumes. And I'm LinkedIn member 7653 of these.
How do you know that, by the way? Just a quick
It was part of the original URL that you had.
Oh, so it actually gave a number in the URL. Right. So I wonder if I can. Well, now I changed mine to customizing it, but
everyone does. But if you happen to go to, as though you're trying to place an ad on LinkedIn, it gives you the number.
Interesting. So you're 1,700 and what?
7653.
Oh, 7653. And you were an early adopter. So
yeah.
So when did you pick up getting on LinkedIn? Like 2010, right when it was coming out, or?
I don't remember the year.
Yeah.
With you. But
the fact is, you've seen over 1.3 million resumes come across your desk.
I've evaluated 750,000 that we were able to quantify.
Yeah.
And there were many more that got lost over the course of time. But
let's stay right there, if you don't mind, because there's people listening to this show. My core audience is going to be entrepreneurial minded. They don't all have to be startups or business owners or solopreneurs, but that seems to be the core of them. But there's also people that are right now listening to this, maybe on their lunch break, they're working retail and they want to become the store manager and the district manager and C-level or whatever. And they're looking for growth. It could be the athlete that listens to this to figure out their daily habits that are going to help them deliver excellence, right? You've seen 700,000 resumes. I had a cousin of mine who works for YouTube look at a resume for me like 5 years ago when I was looking for a position. And he said it was too many pages. It was 3 pages long. So it needs to be 1 page. I'm like, well, I did all this stuff, right? I did all this stuff. When you're looking at this and you're seeing 700,000 over a long period of time, what is this going to immediately disqualify one or make you say, this is one I want to read more into? Is there something just in 2 seconds that you see and go, nope or yes?
The statistics are, a recruiter looking at a resume makes a decision within 6 seconds. I got it down to 4.5. And what I focused in on when I did search was, is it make the case that the person's qualified within one page down. Mm-hmm. So by that, I mean, if you hit page down one time, have I found it yet? If I haven't, I'm going to take, if there's a possibility, I'm going to use the feature in Word where I can search for a keyword to identify that. If I don't find it at the beginning, it's probably old or non-existent. And thus, I'm not interested because my client wouldn't have been interested. So if you're writing a resume, your goal is to make the fit obvious to someone, as though a 6-year-old with ADHD is reading the resume.
It's going to get it, yeah. That's really interesting. So essentially, there's kind of an SEO component to
everything.
To everything, but how you were accessing and evaluating resumes is you knew that there were maybe like 3 to 5 characteristics or keywords that you were looking for. So you simply searched them. I mean, the technology is not that advanced to search a Word document for a keyword. Can you give me an example of something like that? What it might be?
Sure. I did a lot of technology recruiting. I also did other forms of recruiting. But if I was looking for a particular client, on their message to me or what they uploaded, I had an identification code for the job. So I knew what the job was. And then I would look I hit Control F, which is the find feature in Word.
Yeah.
And I would type in J2EE. No answer, nothing there. Why this person send a resume to me? Sure. And waste my time.
Right.
And their answer was always, well, you should call me. I might have the experience you're looking for. No.
I don't have time to do that for all of those. Yeah. That's incredible. We're going to get a little bit more into your backstory as well. I'm going to take a quick sponsorship timeout. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, guys, we're back in action with Jeff. You can connect with him directly on LinkedIn. It's Jeff Altman, Altman, and check out his websites. Again, it's nobscoachingadvice.com and thebiggamehunter.us. Let's get right back at it here. So you also have a podcast we talked about, right? In the job search market. It's one of the top podcasts, if not the top. And prior to the break, we were talking about job search and people's resume and the 4.5 seconds that they're going to be qualified to at least further review or disqualified immediately. You're doing key search terms, which is really cool, keywords. Can you give us the top 3 reasons that people do land a job after an interview? Like, can you narrow it down to that for our audience to understand?
When firms hire, skills competence is only one thing a firm looks for. It's the easiest one to assess for. And depending where you are in the country, there are a lot of people who are going to be as qualified as you. So understand that's only one attribute that they look for. Self-confidence is a second. Self-confidence basically allows you to inspire confidence that you're the solution to a problem. Character. Do you demonstrate character? Are you a character? Some firms want to hire both or one or the other. Right. They like people who are characters.
Yeah, have a pulse. You're not just a robot, right?
Right. Chemistry. Now, this is a funny one on chemistry. I want to differentiate it from fit. Fit is the excuse that organizations use to evaluate and assess people with, but they're flat out wrong. They're incapable of evaluating for fit because they're on good behavior, and so's the job hunter. Everyone's posturing in this relationship. So how do you figure out if someone can fit if you're both conning one another? You're both putting on a good act. So I talk in terms of chemistry, and that's an interpersonal relationship. Can you lower your guard, be honest as a human being, and relate well to them, and vice versa? Charisma. Charismatic people always do better than non-charismatics. Doesn't mean a non-charismatic doesn't get hired, because there are plenty of quantitative roles for which an individual performs exceedingly well. It all adds up to competence, self-confidence, character, chemistry, charisma, all add up to we trust her, we trust him. And that's what they're going for. That they don't have to worry about whether or not you're the right person for them to hire. And it's a fuzzy skill. It's a fuzzy evaluation. And the proof of that is within 18 months, statistics show that employers 60% of the time or more have buyer's remorse. And job hunters, it happens even sooner.
The other way around, where they hire someone and they're like, man, we just got this wrong. And they know within the first month, first 30 days, they're already shaking their head.
Well, John, from an employer standpoint, within 18 months, they figured out that I wasn't so sure I should hire this person. On the job hunter side, it happens even sooner.
I got you. Yeah. So let's flip it around. So those are some great qualities. And I think what I just took away from what you said to summarize it, and thank you for elaborating on it. Anybody that's listening to this, that's valuable, whether you're looking for a job right now or just want to know what qualities that could be. If you're in an existing role, it's not only to get a new job, but the things that people love about someone. It's not only the skills they have, but it's their character, it's who they are, it's their makeup, it's their qualities, right? It's what makes someone enjoyable to hang out with and have a conversation with, the character and qualities that come across on the microphone, right? That's why people tune into our shows. They enjoy tuning into us. There's plenty of other shows talking about what you and I talk about, but there's a way that we do it that people thankfully enjoy, because it keeps us going, right? Keeps us people tuning in. What are 3 ways then on the flip that just an interview goes sour and like this happens and there's the door? I mean, obviously someone coming in just being a complete a-hole or a jerk is gonna, but what are like some 3 things that people think they should maybe do and they do and you're like, eek?
Well, I'm going to start with the biggest one, which has nothing to do with the potential hire, and that is the employer misreads something or they misunderstand something, and they find out within 30 seconds, this is an oops meeting. Oops, I should have scheduled this person in.
I got you.
So that's on them. And they never explain that they made a mistake. So within 10 minutes, you're escorted to the front door and you go, what happened? What did I say? What did I do? Most of the time it's on them. It has nothing to do with you.
Okay. That's really good to know.
On the other side, on the job hunter side, there are so many reasons. But one is you put people to sleep.
Okay.
You bask in your own magnificence. You drone on and on and on. And most of us only have an attention span of a minute to a minute 15. And thus, by over-talking, you put people to sleep, or worse than that, they start thinking about how the heck do I get out of this? Or I got a meeting after this. I could really prep for it. Or where am I going to lunch? Where's my wife? I don't know if my wife, husband, or partner. And I just start thinking of anything other than the interview. Yeah. So over-talking is a mistake. Another one is you don't make it easy for them to figure out that you're qualified. The more you make them work to find out that you're qualified, the less likely they believe it's a primary skill.
That's a great point. Say that one more time, because I think I get it, but I think it's too important to just let that slide.
Thank you. The more you make them work
Mm-hmm.
to find out that you're qualified, the less likely they are to believe that you actually are. They don't think it's a primary skill, it's a secondary one.
John Maxwell said this in another interview. He leaves the cookies on the bottom shelf so everybody can get them right away. You don't have to go digging through the house to find them. So if you have some skills and attributes and qualities and awards and stuff, don't bury them and don't bore people with these long, elaborate stories on it, but keep it consumable, quick, and something that the interviewer is going to be engaging with, right?
Exactly.
And it's out in the open. It's, what about an overconfidence? How often do you see that where someone comes in and they think they're going to win you over with swagger and you're like, who are you?
I don't see that happen very often.
Well, that's good.
I think a lot of folks have outgrown that, except in sales. Where swagger, where that quality of self-confidence is one of those qualities that they like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying to be an a-hole, but at the same time, it's about, you walk in with presence, with bearing, with command of the room.
Yeah, you own your space that you're in.
Right.
I did recruiting and I was a sales manager. I was a store manager, selling at Sleep Number, and I did some hiring. And there were times when I had that situation where I felt duped, if you will, where someone came in and was confident and just really enjoyed the conversation. Then once we got them out on the sales floor, it was like a different person showed up. And sometimes it's like, oh, they were selling me so hard. It's like, sell me the way you sold me over the cup of coffee interview. That's what I need to do out here on the floor,
It's funny that you raised that because, I work with a number of firms to help them with hiring. Mm-hmm. And the first scenario for salespeople that I coach sales managers to do is they meet someone for the first time. Don't care if it's by phone, Zoom, however, in person is even better. Think about the favorite product you love to sell.
Yeah.
Sell it to me. That's the opening question.
Yeah.
Sell it to me. If they can't sell you their favorite product, the easiest one to sell for them, you can end it right then and there.
That's a really good point. Yeah. That should come out as easy as two friends having a drink, talking about the game or whatever that they're passionate about. That should not feel like it's pulling teeth. It should flow really, really confidently and easily. That's awesome. Now, I made a promise to the audience and to you that we'd get into your backstory. I wanted to start with these golden nuggets, if you will, of things that you can bring to the table, talking about job search and what makes a great, a great employee, and what also goes into an employee turning into the executive level. We talked about all of that so far. Get us into when did it click for you? When you knew that you were going to be kind of a leader in this space and this was something you're going to do long term, like, was that a vision you had for yourself as a youngster, or was there a path that led you to where you're at today?
I stumbled into recruiting. I don't think any little girl or any boy, when they're asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, except if they have a parent who's in the business, I don't think any little boy or girl says, Mommy, Daddy, I want to be a recruiter.
Right.
Really?
I agree. Yeah.
So
the only time I've thought about it is in football. Like I think it'd be cool to be like a scout, which is recruiting in a different sense. But yeah, that would be kind of cool. Unfortunately, those guys are way underpaid. But anyway, most kids are thinking about being on the star of the show and not necessarily the person who casted the star in the show. Right, the casting call or the judges on a panel. You're thinking about that, but these positions are obviously super important, and they're what put the right people in place for success.
So I stumbled into the career. I was a political kid, and I had an opportunity. I had offers from 3 presidential candidates to travel on national staff for one of the elections, and I did a trip for one of them. I was under surveillance the entire time, and it spooked me. So I tried to figure out what to do next.
How old were you there? You're being under surveillance?
21.
So you just got the impression that if I wanted to pursue this field, I'm going to have the scrutiny, not only of the public eye, but there's like this presence that's always watching every time I sneeze here.
Yeah, I had a tail on me at a particular large national meeting. And it was a tail for the opposition because they want to know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I was in a conversation with someone who tapped me on the shoulder to point and just very simply lean forward and say, to let me know that someone was trying to eavesdrop the conversation over my left shoulder. So he was standing there and he had an appropriate political button, but he was clearly out of place. He was in his 50s with a bunch of 20-year-olds around. And he was there from a state attorney general's office.
Did you confront him?
I didn't, but the person I was talking with did.
Yeah.
And a fist fight broke out between the two of them.
So you knew for sure that's who it was.
Yeah. And, I got the guy out of the room by going into hippy dippy mode and going, it was the early 70s. I'm going, hey, look, man, this is all about peace, man. Peace is really cool. And this is all an act, so my friend couldn't run out. He was the president of the university student body, and he was just trying to help me out and didn't like that someone was trying to listen in. So we got him out the door and away from where this was occurring. Mm-hmm. And, there was a time I went to the restroom, and I knew I had a tail on me, and I climbed out the window and came out a different door and waited for the guy to follow. And he did. We continued on, but they all knew I knew who my tail was.
Yeah.
So having come back from them, I decided maybe politics wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And I answered a New York Times ad with the headline, "Management Trainee, Inexperienced Preferred." And I almost didn't answer it because inexperienced means something different than no experience. I'm a grammarian in many respects, so words have meaning to me. And I answered anyway, and I started working for this employment agency in New York that trained me on every despicable, disgusting, loathsome tactic that recruiters used back in the Stone Ages.
Wow.
And I hated it.
In a sense, it helped you identify what not to do, though. It's like when you have kind of like a bad head coach and you're like, this is just nobody's like, it's not resonating with anybody. And if a player on that team ever got the opportunity to coach, they would know we're staying away from that.
And it's funny because often when job hunters are asked, what do you want to do next? No. And I'll say, what don't you want to do? Because that one's always easiest. Mm-hmm. And then you flip it to the opposite side, and then you meet in the middle somewhere where you have a range of possibilities to explore. Mm-hmm. For me, I knew very quickly I didn't want to engage in that. Started my first business with a partner when I was 22, back in the Stone Ages. We were together for 7.5 years before I got rid of him and started my own firm, the first one, built it. And, I was a solopreneur back in the day where we didn't have a name for that. I worked from home. I had triplex pentests in West Village in New York, and it was lovely. I had a fireplace, a 4-seater jacuzzi, a roof garden with Midtown skyline views. It was a gorgeous place to live and to work from. I had a one-step commute to the office. And, it was absolutely wonderful. Grew orchids in there and really enjoyed it. And eventually, I started to outgrow certain things. And eventually, I was bought out, joined another firm, and I regretted it within a year. Mm-hmm. I was looking for a place to ride out the first Gulf War, which I knew was going to be a problem, and allowed myself to be bought, and it was a mistake. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I went out on my own again and started to do that before I then allowed myself to get bought one more time. Mm-hmm. I'll just simply say, as I got older, I started to think of what else did I want to do with my life. Right. And around leadership, the search field is not really designed to help someone develop one's leadership. Mm-hmm. Where I got that was from outside of there. because I'd done a men's retreat sponsored by an organization called the Mankind Project. And as I became involved with the organization, someone gave me the proverbial tap on the shoulder to say, I see you and you have much more within you. And for many people, they're waiting for that tap that comes from outside, that they need to have in order to move forward rather than constantly repeat the same story over and over again.
Right.
And for me, that was the beginning of my growth in leadership, was getting that tap on the shoulder and practicing outside of my field. Right. And developing skills outside of my field that I eventually brought back in. And I met my wife in graduate school. I was planning on being a therapist in private practice. We decided, and it was a we, that I'd continue on and search for a number of years because she arrived with student loans. We were going to have the house, the kid, the whole bit. And I'll just simply say, no regrets, never look back with any doubts. I love my son. He's terrific. And my wife is as good, if not better. So good choices that I made along the way, but I kept growing and learning and putting myself into situations where I would stretch myself.
I want to stop right there. That was great. And I just want to say cheers to you, man, and your happy marriage and your son and just having a beautiful family. And then also choosing what you're going to spend your time and energy on and then winning in those environments. Like, finding the right spouse, huge win, right? Setting yourself up, knowing when to take that next step, huge win. You identified it and you took action and then you executed on it. Big part, and the reason I wanted to pause right there was you talked about getting information and influence from outside of only what was being given to you either in that work environment. And I want to make sure our audience is tuning in right now really closely. Podcasting is a great way to do that. My desk is covered in books. Try to read at least a chapter every day. I'm not a perfect human being, but I like to put at least a chapter of new information into my think tank over here every single day. Some people read 50 books a year. Most of those people are highly successful individuals. They're always learning, always growing. You said it right there. Continue to learn, continue to grow. But I want to make sure that we hit home on the point that it's not always going to come to your leadership doesn't always come from your direct leader or mentor at work. Some companies don't even have mentors. Some do. Some have these training portals you do online and you learn and grow that way. Awesome. It's typically going to teach you on tasks pertaining to your job, not how you think and act. So I would just encourage people to go outside. I'm going to let you elaborate on that however you want, but go outside of your means to learn, of what's just spoon fed to you and question things and learn, grow, and be the best version of yourself. What would you add to that?
The goal is to be world class, to be a champion at what you do. And most organizations don't want that. They want homogeneity. They may talk about transformation in their work, but not for their people. You are a disposable cog in a machine. And if you don't believe me, you weren't paying attention. During every recession, there are very talented people who are brought out back and told, thanks, but no thanks. We appreciate your service. Good luck.
There's the plank. Yeah.
Right. So there comes a point for me and for many of the people that I coach where I'll say it's important for you to risk everything because they're holding back in some last dimension. They've grown so far, but you got to put yourself out there with that one last mile, that one last stretch. And I used mile because I was a marathon runner at one point. 26 miles, 26.1 plus 385 yards. And when you train for a marathon, I ran New York at that time, and it was it got up to 90 degrees that day, which is too hot to run the race.
Yeah.
You're
it's like 100% humidity. I'm in New York too, so I know when it gets 90s here, it's a very humid, hot, like it's not dry heat. Yeah.
No, and the concrete is generating heat.
Yeah.
And there's no shade when
you lost about 18 pounds that weekend or whatever.
Yes, I did. And I wound up with heat exhaustion as well. So I was supposed to go to a wedding that evening. I could not make it.
Wow.
So I'll just simply say, there comes the point where you have to stop holding back. Now, I'm not saying to quit your job. I always encourage people, you experiment with the new idea, with the new career by doing something on the side, part-time, investigating, taking classes. You do a lot of stuff, but there comes the point where you can't keep doing it the way you've always done it. You're going to have to risk everything to step into the abyss. There was someone I was coaching around leadership, and the first time he went in front of a panel that would certify him to help with leading in an organization, they said no to him. And they said, you'd be great in the boardroom, but not for us. Because he was a professional versus a leader. And the second time he went up, he remembered my telling him to risk it all. And the risk for him was the risk of not being liked because he would say things that would offend. And that's exactly what they were looking for. Yeah. So many people wind up being nice, professional. And if you're only listening to this as a podcast, you're missing my sarcasm and my air quotes around those words.
Yeah.
And leaders are exceptional women and men.
They're real. A good leader is going to be real, which why I have my late grandmother. I'm 100% Italian, and people who are watching this will know that because of my eyebrows and my schnoz. But she would tell you exactly how it was, and if you did something wrong, she told you about it. If you did something awesome, and she actually admired it, it was huge because she didn't give out freebie compliments. So that's same kind of thing here. These guys, if you're just Mr. Nice Guy all the time, and you're trying to fit into this okay thing, and you're only being a percentage of your real self, then that's a problem.
And most people try to figure this out on their own. And the truth is, I don't care if you hire me as a coach or someone else, but you can't figure it out on your own. It takes a lot more time, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes doing it.
Right.
And I'm not a believer in mentoring because, frankly, mentoring is a free service. People act as though it's not worth much to them because it's free. People, when they make the investment, are more likely to follow the recommendations or suggestions because they've got skin in the game.
I was just going to say it. They got skin in the game. You nailed it. Yeah. Let's hit this. We only have like 10 more minutes. There's one thing I wanted to finish your thought, and there's a couple questions I want to make sure we get to.
So cheaping out will be costly.
Yeah. Not doing it is going to cost you, right? Not buying it, not investing it. That's going to cost you more than whatever the investment is. Absolutely. Well said. Talk about, you've been coaching people now, right? And again, not for free because again, they're just going to take it and leave it. But you're a professional coach. Talk about when I say this, remember talk about the shade of blue. When I say blue, you're thinking of a color. When I say a client that comes to the top of your mind, a transformational client that started at X and you brought them to Y, who comes to mind? Tell that story.
Yeah, I've got a couple like that. And I think of one where, a nice man, no question about it, insecure, didn't believe his leadership, organizational leadership saw him. And in working with him over a number of years, 4 promotions later, part of the relationship was, I'll put it in a vain way, he ingested part of my personality over the course of time and made it his. And I don't want to make it seem is that he became mini me. No, he became Maxie him.
Right. Yeah, it's great. You take attributes from other people and make them your own. That's what people do all the time, right? You
Right.
got to turn it into your own version of it. Yeah.
And the awareness that he needed support was huge for him because, like many
Mm-hmm.
people, they're trained, I could do this on my own, spend money for it. Oh. And the reality was, he knew it would be faster
Right.
if he didn't have to figure it out, if he could work with someone to deal with situations that he was in and that he could trust.
So good. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is realize, like, if you have quote unquote a problem or a hurdle or something that needs improvement, without realizing it, it'll never change. And I've learned that early on. I've told this a few times. It's like my first girlfriend ever. I was like 15 years old. I remember whenever we had these little arguments, started all the way back then. I knew that the reason that we were having them is because the other person didn't realize something either I was doing, or she didn't realize that she was doing something that was bugging me. We had to talk about it and say, did you know that, you're just doing this thing and it's quirky and it's bothering, it's driving me crazy. Right. It's like the guy who you're talking to him and he does like some weird twitch or something and he doesn't even know he's doing it. But you just have to say nicely or however you, whatever. Maybe it's your buddy and just slap on the side of the head. What are you doing, man? But until you realize something, how do you take care of it? So this gentleman you're talking about, he came to you and said, I realize I need to kind of surrender on this. If I do it myself, it could take me forever to get the results. Let's work on this together. And you're going to identify those things that are hard for someone to internalize themselves. So you don't even know you're making or doing something that's holding you back until someone else is evaluating it. Typically, I know that's a broad statement, but would you
And
agree?
I'll add
Yeah.
to that, there's the part where you're working with someone older.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it that way because culturally, older individuals, ageism exists.
Sure.
And people cop to ageism too quickly. But Stanford and another university came out with a study that translates into there's one bias that the culture tolerates, and that's age bias.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that historically, older individuals in most cultures were the respected people, not in US culture. They're the ones who we put out to pasture, or we completely disregard them, ignore them,
Mm-hmm.
dismiss them, and mock them. And working with an older individual, I don't care if it's a family member, although it's ideal if it isn't, gives you the opportunity to practice trust of someone older. Doesn't mean you have to listen to everything they say, but they have different perspectives than what you've been trained to listen for
Yeah.
or to behave like, that are going to make you stand out
Mm-hmm.
and give you the gravitas that comes with real leadership, holding the center of your organization, being
Mm-hmm.
responsible for people, caring about your people. There's a coach named Lance Secretan who has a model called the Castle Principles.
Mm-hmm.
Courage, authenticity, service, truthfulness, love, effectiveness. It works beautifully in leadership. Courage, authenticity, service, truthfulness, love, effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Works beautifully in sales. It works beautifully in management. It works beautifully every part of your life.
Yeah. I was going to say life in general right there. That's not a specific tool, specific identifiers. Those work really in anything. Kindness, it's always the right choice.
And it all starts with the courage
Mm-hmm.
to begin, to
Mm-hmm.
try, to care enough that other people make a difference, that you want to do something differently, that you want to make a difference, that you care. So
Right.
to me, it all starts with the courage
Mm-hmm.
in this model.
Yeah, and caring about someone or something uh is not something you could fluff. People could try it, but once that once that, oh, I think he's doing it with some kind of ultimatum or, alter. No, once that's figured out, you're done. Yeah, I mean, if it's not real. So people do have, typically humans have more connectors for energy, and you can feel that authenticity, I feel like. And
You
when it's
betcha.
broken, that's where relationships are going to go in the tank on that. With the last couple minutes, what I'd love you to do is I want you to think about this one, okay? So you are the author of your own story. You're the protagonist, right? God willing, you have many more years that you can continue to tell your story. Let's say there's blank pages ahead of you. You get to write the end. So from now until whatever your end date is, you get to write all those pages exactly how you want. What would you want your legacy to be?
Well, I'm creating my legacy now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already in process with this, which is great. My son is an independent individual, which he's done very well with doing. I have a chance to see him at his own wedding.
That's
He
awesome.
finds a husband that he adores. Be a great moment.
Cool.
My wife and I have many years together. We just had a 7-month interruption while she was taking care of her sister who was a post-COVID long hauler. So it took 7 months, but she got her to a place that treated her, and she's back to normal, which is phenomenal. For the longest time, we were fearful that she'd have to sell her house because she couldn't return to work. So for me personally, it is seeing the joy in others and the passion and the drive, and that they took the idea of risking it all and made it their own.
Yeah. That's where the magic is, again. And I like that the way you articulate it is work on that passion, turn it into something on the side, get it going a little bit. And then eventually you're going to have to do the thing where it's like Indiana Jones, where you take the one thing and you got to put it in. Right. And the risk is that the whole place could start to crumble. I never thought of that analogy, but it kind of it works in this case where you have to spend all your time and energy in place of what was there before. Really, really well said. I can tell that you're the kind of guy, and this is why I wanted you on the show. It's not about you. It's about the impact that you're making around you, whether that's a small circle of your family, whether that's, hundreds of people listening, thousands of people, and the many people that you've had, 700,000 or so resumes that at least were quantified. There's more than that you probably saw that you had an influence on. And what was the number? Like 1,200 definite hires that you help people land a job.
More than 1,200 full-time positions.
I mean, that you helped change their life in a positive way, however you want to look at it. So you were part of that process. They have to do their thing, but you helped them. So I just think you're an incredible person, and I appreciate you being on. Last thing I'd like to say here, and then you can add to it however you'd like. But my goal and the purpose that I carved time out of my week to do the show is to inspire my audience to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. Deliver a concise message to them to do that. I think you've already done it a few times, but if you can kind of put a bow on it.
I create a glorious world by providing bold and blessing leadership. That's what I do.
So if somebody's, on the fence right now with getting started and they're just not sure what would you say to that person that's contemplating going into it?
You're not going to figure it out. You need support with figuring it out. I don't care who the person is. I'd love it to be me, but find someone that you can work with to figure it out. Because when someone says to me, I'm going to think about it, how often does that really happen?
Yeah. True. That's just the nicest way for them to say that I'm not going to make this
lie.
decision.
It's not the nicest way. The nicest way is to say the truth. I don't know where to start. I'm not sure what I should do. That's the nice way. It's honest. I'm going to think about it. What are you going to think about?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's them thinking that it's not hurting your feelings or whatever, but yeah, it's totally, it's an escape. Awesome. I love that. One of the things I'm hearing you say there is the best way to figure things out is actually to move forward, and you have something to work with. A ball of clay will never turn into anything remarkable unless you spend time with it. So if you're over here on the other side of the fence deciding to jump into the entrepreneurial or whatever that looks like for you landscape, it's never going to adapt or grow into anything unless you spend time in it. So you need to move forward to do that.
Being in one position, being yanked in one way or another leaves you in one position. You're still stuck in the middle as though there's quicksand there. The person who gets ahead isn't always the smartest. They don't always work the hardest. Those are great qualities to have. People get ahead by being alert to and acting on opportunities.
It's awesome, man. Anything you'd like to add before we head out? Anything? I'm not sure exactly when this episode is going to come out. We're recording it in the very beginning of August here in 2021. If anyone's going back and listening to the archives or whatever, but if you can, I always like to say, be great and be grateful, right? So I'd love to hear some of the things you shared it in your story, but what are a couple of things you're most grateful for today?
Well, I want to tell people how they can reach me.
Go for it.
Which is the easiest way is at my websites. You can schedule a free discovery call at either nobscoachingadvice.com or the biggamehunter.us. We can figure out if it's going to be worth our while working together.
Mm-hmm.
As for what I'm grateful for, it's the woman I'm married to, who is such a wonderful heart. I found her 20 some odd years ago. As she walked into class one day. She was a rebel who changed on the second semester of a 2-semester series in graduate school, and it took a while for us to click. It took 3 first dates. And there are many.
Well, you persevered. You were persistent.
There were gaps between them.
Yeah.
But I'm also grateful for all the people who I've known before who helped me become who I am today. I've got a spine like my parents. I've got a softness like my parents. And I'm very grateful for them because they helped lay a strong foundation.
Is that who you would say was one of your biggest, if not the biggest influence to make you who you are today? Would it be your parents?
I'd have to think about that. There've just been so many great people, and they're the launch point because they're always the start.
Yeah.
So they become the foundation upon which a lot has been placed on top.
And what about those other elements that you sprinkle in? Are you someone who's putting a lot of time into reading? And like we talked about, where are you getting your resources?
Podcasts is a lot of it. I've become less of a book reader. I'm starting to listen to audiobooks. Sure. I've gone back for classes. Like my master's was phenomenal for me. Coach training was terrific for me. Different people at different times have been able to receive their influence, and they've been remarkably helpful. And then going out and being willing to experiment, knowing that I could fail, but believing that there would be someone to back me up in case I was failing.
Oh, man, that's so good. Again, talking about the support system, Jeff did not get to where he's at today by himself. He had a great supporting cast around him at home. He did it when he was in the recruiting role, and he also was looking outside of the things that were right in front of him, those resources. He was going out and seeking them. So I just want to say thank you again, Jeff, for your time on the show. You guys can check him out again at nobscoachingadvice.com, also jobsearchcoachinghq.com. And what was the Big Game Hunter? It was the biggamehunter.us.
Correct.
Awesome. Honor and privilege to have you, Jeff. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And folks, be great.
And be grateful. Cheers. I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/MikedUp. It's spelled MIKED up.
patreon.com/MikedUp. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at MikedUpPodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCiccio, MikedICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.